whereas from an evolutionary perspective, this variation is part of our biology. So this new field of evolutionary medicine then is an integration of both ways of thinking about biological problems. And I think this integration, as we'll see, is a powerful new approach to understanding health and disease. So the first question that this field has begun to think about is why, after hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, disease has not been eliminated by natural selection. And evolutionary biology provides, I think, a good framework for understanding the limitations of natural selection and why diseases persist and why they will continue to be part of the human condition. 4 of the most important reasons are listed on this slide, having to do with trade-offs of various kinds, of the coevolution of humans with our pathogens, and with the rapid environmental change that we are experiencing. And I will talk about each of these causations of disease very briefly, and I hope we can return to them in the discussion. So most genes affect many different traits, and technically the term for this is pleiotropy. And pleiotropic genes, genes with many different effects, may have some beneficial effects and some harmful effects, but they will spread in a population because their beneficial effects outweigh or balance out their harmful effects. So one example of the spread of a pleiotropic but disease-causing gene are the genes that cause thalassemia. And these genes have the property of protecting people against malaria. And so they have spread and increased in frequency in Italy and really throughout the world where malaria was prevalent. Unfortunately, these genes also cause the devastating and sometimes fatal illness of thalassemia. But thalassemia is, in a sense, an unavoidable byproduct or consequence of selection for resistance to malaria. There's another kind of trade-off in evolution involving what are known as life history strategies. And this is a trade-off that Dr. Remuzzi referred to in his introduction. People, like all living organisms, have limited resources of energy or time, and we have to use these resources for a variety of tasks, for growth and development, for reproduction, and by reproduction I mean developing sexual characteristics, secondary sex organs, for having children, for nursing them and raising them, all of the energy costs of reproduction. There's energy involved in doing the work of daily living. We have to store energy for times of famine or deprivation. And we need to use energy to repair the inevitable damage that occurs in our bodies. Now, natural selection has shaped the way we use our resources for these different tasks over our life course. And it's shaped this allocation in ways that enhance our reproductive fitness. So you can think that early in life, for the first 10 or 15 years or so, we devote lots of our energy to growing and developing. We don't begin to develop sexual characteristics and secondary sexual characteristics until we're adolescents and teenagers and the like. And we use our energy for different reasons over different times of our lives. But this allocation of resources is referred to as a life history strategy. Now, because our resources are limited, and because their use has been shaped by natural selection to enhance fitness, our bodily maintenance, our somatic maintenance, is imperfect. And therefore, we develop damage in our bodies. And so as a consequence of that, cells die and our tissues and organs misfunction. We develop diseases of aging, and ultimately we die. But we don't think that we age because there are diseases of aging. We age because of the way natural selection has shaped the allocation of our resources in ways that enhance our reproductive fitness. Now, natural selection doesn't operate just on humans, but it operates on all species in the universe, and species that are particularly important for our health are microorganisms, which occupy a major part of our environment. We're surrounded by microorganisms that live in our GI tract, on our skin, in our respiratory tract, in the female reproductive tract. There are many, many microorganisms. Fortunately, most of these cause no trouble, and many of them may in fact be beneficial. And in health, these microorganisms are restricted to those parts of our body that are in contact with the outside world. But natural selection will always favor the spread of organisms that can overcome our defenses and can enter and grow inside us. And some of these may cause disease. These are pathogens. And so as we evolve to be resistant to our pathogens, they evolve to overcome our resistance, leading to a process that's known as host-pathogen coevolution. And understanding this process of host-pathogen coevolution helps us to understand why different kinds of infectious diseases have the kinds of natural histories or courses that they have. Why some are benign and some are very serious. And one way of beginning to think about the theory of host-pathogen coevolution is to understand that in general, pathogens evolve in ways that maximize their transmission from an infected person to uninfected other people. So if we think about the viruses that cause common colds, these viruses are spread most efficiently from healthy people, people who can get up and go about their business, go to work, go to school, and sneeze and cough on their friends and neighbors and spread the virus. And therefore, it's not surprising that cold viruses have evolved in ways that keep people healthy. If you were very sick with a cold and stayed home, those viruses would not spread and would be selected against. But in contrast, if you think about malaria parasites, these parasites are spread most efficiently from very sick individuals, and especially infants, who have very high concentrations of the parasites in their blood and who may be too sick or weak to brush off or kill mosquitoes. And therefore, we can understand why malaria has evolved in ways that have made people, continue to make people very sick. And there's no reason to think that these pathogens will eventually evolve to be benign. Natural selection maintains them as virulent pathogens. Now, sexually transmitted pathogens are interesting because they have an unusual life course that can also be understood in terms of host-pathogen coevolution. So if you think about sexually transmitted pathogens like HIV or the syphilis bacterium, these pathogens cause diseases that are characterized by a very long latent period during which affected people are healthy and are sexually attractive. And so they can continue to be sexually active and spread their pathogen while they're infected. Now, unfortunately, over time, these pathogens eventually cause severe or fatal illness, but this happens long after they have been transmitted from the infected person to others in the community.